The stars were cold and empty when the colony ship called the Wanderer began to die. 3,000 humans floated in the darkness of space. Men, women, and children. Families who had left Earth to find a new home. They had traveled for 2 years across the galaxy, full of hope and dreams. Then, the reactor failed. The ship still moved. But slowly. Too slowly. The power was dying. The heat was fading. Food would last maybe 3 more weeks. Water. Perhaps a month. After that, they would become just another ghost ship, drifting through the endless black. Captain Yoon Tae-soon stood on the bridge and watched his crew try everything. They sent signals in every direction. They begged for help on every frequency, but space was vast, and they were alone in a part of the galaxy where no one traveled. Days passed, then weeks. The temperature dropped. People wrapped themselves in blankets and held their children close. The old and the sick began to die first. Captain Yoon recorded their names in the ship's log. He promised himself he would remember every single one. On the 23rd day, something appeared on the sensors. A ship. Small. Strange. Unlike anything humans had ever seen. It was a Torani vessel. The Torani were not warriors. They were not powerful. In the great politics of the galaxy, they were barely noticed. Their bodies were thin and delicate, with skin that glowed softly like moonlight on water. They had large eyes that seemed to hold endless gentleness. They had never fought a war. They did not believe in violence. When Elder Vel, the leader of the Torani ship, saw the human vessel on his screen, he did not ask questions. He did not calculate costs. He simply said to his crew, "They are dying. We must help." His crew did not argue. The Torani ship was on a journey to establish a new colony. They carried supplies meant for 200 of their own people. Food, medicine, equipment, everything they needed to start a new life on a distant world. They gave it all to the humans. For 6 months, the Torani ship towed the Wanderer through space. They shared their food until their own people went hungry. They gave their medicine until their own sick had nothing. Elder Vel himself ate only once every 3 days so that human children could eat twice. 47 Torani died during those 6 months. They died from hunger, from exhaustion, from giving everything they had to strangers they had never met. Elder Vel held each one as they passed. He sang soft songs to them in his language. He promised them their sacrifice would mean something. His partner, a gentle soul named Yen, was the 31st to die. Yen smiled at him at the end and whispered, "We did the right thing." Elder Vel never stopped believing those words. When the Wanderer finally reached a human outpost, the survivors wept. They fell to their knees and thanked the Torani who had saved them. Captain Yoon stood before Elder Vel, a broken man who had been given hope by creatures who owed him nothing. "How can we ever repay you?" Captain Yoon asked. His voice shook. "You lost so much for us. Your supplies, your people, your loved ones. Tell us what we can do." "Anything. We will do anything." Elder Vel looked at him with those large, kind eyes. His body was thin from months of hunger. His glow had faded from exhaustion. But his spirit remained bright. "Live well," Elder Vel said simply. "Raise your children. Build your homes. Be happy. That is enough for us." Humanity never forgot. 200 years later, Admiral Kang Junho stood in a room full of the most powerful people on Earth. The United Earth Council sat before him in a half-circle of expensive chairs. Their faces showed confusion, concern, and fear. On the screen behind Junho, a message played. It was a distress signal from the Torani homeworld. "Please," a Torani voice said through static. "The hegemony has come. They say we are too weak to exist. They are going to kill us all. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We cannot fight. Please, if anyone can hear this, please help us." The message ended. The council members looked at each other. The hegemony was the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They conquered worlds for fun. They destroyed species for insults. They had 2,000 warships and millions of soldiers. Humanity had 400 ships. They were a young species, a small species. In the eyes of the galaxy, they were nothing. "Admiral," said the council leader slowly, "you are asking us to go to war with the hegemony. For the tyranny. A species that has no military value, no resources we need, no political importance." Junho did not blink. "Yes. Why?" Junho turned to face the council. His eyes moved across their faces one by one. These were people who had grown up hearing the story. These were people whose grandparents had taught them the names of the 47. These were people who knew exactly why. 200 years ago, Junho said, his voice calm but heavy. 3,000 humans were dying in space. No one came to help. No one. Except the tyranny. They had nothing to gain. They knew they would suffer. They came anyway. 47 of them died so that our ancestors could live. He pointed at the screen where the message had played. Captain Yoon asked Elder Vel how humanity could repay them. Elder Vel said, "We should live well. We have done that. We have built cities. We have raised children. We have become strong." Junho stepped forward. "But living well is not enough. Not when the people who saved us are about to die. Humanity pays its debts. That is who we are. That is who we have always been." The room was silent. Then, one by one, the council members nodded. Junho turned to his officers. His voice carried across the room like thunder. "Prepare the fleet. Every single ship. We go to war." The Galactic Council met on a station that floated between three suns. It was the largest structure ever built by living creatures. Thousands of species sent representatives here to talk, to argue, to make deals. Here, the fate of worlds was decided with words instead of weapons. Dr. Yoon stood at the center of the great chamber. She was a scientist, not a politician. Her hands were made for holding research tools, not microphones. But today, she held evidence. Today, she had come to beg. Around her sat hundreds of alien delegates. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some looked like nothing she could describe. All of them watched her with cold, distant eyes. "The Tyranni have done nothing wrong," Hana said. Her voice echoed in the massive room. "They are peaceful. They have never attacked anyone. They have never threatened anyone. The hegemony wants to destroy them simply because they are weak. This is not war. This is murder." She pressed a button. Images appeared above her head. Tyranni cities. Tyranni children. Tyranni families holding each other as warships filled their sky. "Please," Hana said. "Help them." The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then, High Speaker Ren rose from his seat. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes like black glass. He represented no single species. He spoke for the council itself. "Dr. Yoon," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "The council understands your concern. The Tyranni are indeed peaceful. But the hegemony is powerful. Very powerful. If we challenge them, many worlds will burn. Many species will suffer." He spread his hands in a gesture that pretended to show regret. "The Tyranni are a small species. They have no resources. They have no strategic value. Why should we risk everything for them?" Hana stared at him. "Because it is right." Ren smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Morality is a luxury, Doctor. The strong survive. The weak perish. This is the natural order of things. The council will not intervene." Other delegates murmured agreement. Some even looked relieved. Better the Tyranni than them. Captain Baek Minho stood among the human delegation. He watched the aliens nod and whisper. He watched them decide that a peaceful species deserved to die because helping them was too hard. His fists clenched until his knuckles turned white. "They call us young," he muttered to the officer beside him. "They call us primitive. Children playing in a galaxy of adults." He turned and walked toward the exit. "Let us show them what primitive looks like when it is angry." Back on Earth, something remarkable was happening. When the news spread that humanity was going to war for the Tyranni, the people did not protest. They did not complain. They did not ask why their government was risking everything for aliens. They volunteered. Factories that made household items switched to building ship parts. Workers who had never touched a weapon trained day and night to become soldiers. Scientists abandoned their research to develop new shields, new engines, new weapons. Old soldiers, men and women who had served decades ago, came out of retirement. They showed up at military bases with gray hair and steady hands. "I still remember how to fight," they said. "Let me help." Arning. Young people signed up by the thousands. They did not want glory. They did not want adventure. They wanted to honor a promise made before they were born. In cities around the world, people gathered to donate whatever they could. Money, food, medicine, blood. One old woman gave her wedding ring. "It was my grandmother's," she said. "She was on the Wanderer. Use it. Melt it down. Build something that will save them." The galaxy watched this through spy satellites and hidden sensors. They saw the humans building, training, preparing. Intelligence officers sent confused reports to their governments. "They are serious." One report said, "They are actually going to fight the hegemony. For the Torani. We do not understand why." None of them understood. They had never had someone sacrifice everything for them. Lieutenant Park Sora sat in her small room aboard the destroyer Iron Will. She was 23 years old. She had been in the military for only 5 years. Now she was about to fly into the largest battle in human history. Her hands shook as she checked her equipment. Not from fear, from the weight of what she carried. Her communicator buzzed. A message from her grandmother. Sora's grandmother was 91 years old. She rarely sent messages. She said technology confused her. But today, she had typed something with her old, slow fingers. Sora opened the message. "Your great-great-great-grandmother was on the Wanderer. She was 6 years old when the Torani saved her. She never forgot their kindness. She taught her children to remember. They taught their children. I taught your mother. Your mother taught you. Now, it is your turn to show what that memory means. Make them proud. My girl. Make them all proud." Sora read the message 3 times. Then she wiped her eyes, put on her uniform, and walked to her station. Admiral Junho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Resolve. Through the window, he could see hundreds of human ships forming up in Earth's orbit. Every single warship humanity possessed. Every soldier, every pilot, every officer who could fight. Behind him, his officers waited for orders. "Admiral," his second-in-command said quietly. "Intel reports the hegemony has over 2,000 ships at Torani Prime. We have 400. Junho nodded slowly. "I know, sir. The odds are not in our favor." Junho turned to look at his officers. These were good people, brave people. They knew they might not come home. They came anyway. "The Torani had nothing to gain by saving us," Junho said. "They had everything to lose. But when they saw humans dying, they did not calculate the odds. They did not measure the risks. They simply helped." He straightened his uniform. "We will do the same. Prepare for jump." Across 400 ships, engines began to glow. Computers calculated the path through hyperspace. Soldiers said quiet prayers or wrote final letters to loved ones. The galaxy watched in disbelief as the entire human fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel. They were heading toward almost certain death, and not one of them turned back. The sky above Torani Prime was filled with death. 2,000 hegemony warships hung in orbit like a swarm of metal insects. They were massive, ugly things covered in weapons. Each one was built for only one purpose: destruction. Below them, the Torani looked up at their end. Warlord Drax sat on his command throne aboard the flagship Devastator. He was huge, even by hegemony standards. His body was covered in old battle scars. His eyes were small and cruel. He had destroyed 11 species in his career. The Torani would be number 12. "Pathetic creatures," he growled, watching the planet below. "They do not even try to fight. They just wait to die." His officers laughed. They had expected some resistance. Maybe a few ships. Maybe some brave fools trying to slow them down. Instead, they found nothing. The Torani had no military, no weapons, no way to defend themselves. It was almost too easy. "Begin the bombardment," Drac ordered. "Turn their cities to dust." But before his weapons could fire, alarms screamed across every hegemony ship. "Warlord," an officer shouted. "Multiple hyperspace signatures. Something is coming." Drac leaned forward. "The Galactic Council?" "They would not dare." "No, Warlord. The signatures are human." Space itself seemed to tear open as 400 human warships burst out of hyperspace. They emerged in perfect formation, creating a wall between the hegemony fleet and the Torani homeworld. For a moment, there was only silence. Drac stared at the human ships. They were smaller than his vessels, less armored, fewer weapons. His fleet outnumbered them 5-1. Then he began to laugh. It started as a low rumble in his chest. Then it grew into a roar that filled his bridge. His officers joined him, their laughter echoing through the ship. "Humans," Drac bellowed. "The little monkeys from that wet planet. They brought toys to face warriors." He slammed his fist on his throne. "Open a channel. Let me speak to whatever fool leads them." On the bridge of the UES Resolve, Admiral Kang Junho stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His face was calm, his eyes were steady. Around him, his crew prepared for battle with quiet efficiency. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park, Sora said from her station, "the hegemony is hailing us. Put them on screen." Warlord Drac's face appeared before them. His smile was wide and mocking. "Human Commander," Drac said, "I am impressed by your stupidity. You are outnumbered, outgunned, and far from home. What do you possibly hope to achieve?" Junho did not smile. He did not frown. He simply looked at the warlord the way one might look at a bug. "I am Admiral Kang Junho, of the United Earth Fleet. We are here to protect the Torani." Drac laughed again. "Protect them?" With that, he gestured at the human ships. "You cannot stop us. You cannot even slow us down. Turn around and go home, little Admiral. This is your only chance to survive." Junho ignored him. Instead, he turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to the planet below. All frequencies. I want every Torani to hear this." On the surface of Torani Prime, millions of people huddled in their homes. They held their families close. They whispered prayers to gods they hoped could hear them. They waited for fire to fall from the sky. Then a new voice came through every speaker, every communicator, every device that could receive a signal. "People of Torani, this is Admiral Kang Junho of the United Earth Fleet." Elder Vel, ancient and frail, looked up from where he sat. Beside him, young Neth froze in shock. All across the planet, Torani stopped what they were doing and listened. 200 years ago, Junho's voice continued, a human ship was dying in space. 3,000 of our people faced death alone. No one came to help us. No one, except you. His voice was warm but heavy. It carried the weight of centuries. The Torani found us. They shared their food when they had little. They gave their medicine when they needed it themselves. They pulled our ship to safety for 6 months. 47 of your people died so that 3,000 of ours could live. Elder Vel's eyes filled with tears. He remembered every name. He remembered every face. He remembered Yen. "We remember their names," Junho said. "We teach them to our children. Every human child knows the story of the 47. Every human child knows what the Torani did for us." His voice grew stronger. "Today, humanity repays its debt. Stay in your homes. Stay safe. Hold your loved ones close. We will handle this." The transmission ended, but its echo remained in the hearts of every Torani who heard it. They came. The humans actually came. On the Hegemony flagship, Warlord Drac was no longer laughing. Something in the human admiral's voice had made his smile fade. He did not understand it. He did not like it. "You think pretty words will save them?" Drac snarled. "You are outnumbered 5-1. Junho finally looked at him directly. His eyes were cold and hard, like steel that had been forged in fire. "Warlord," Junho said quietly, "you misunderstand our purpose. We are not here to survive." He leaned forward slightly. "We are here to make sure you do not." For just a moment, something flickered in Drax's eyes. It might have been confusion. It might have been the first tiny seed of fear. "All ships," Junho said without looking away from the screen. "Battle positions. Today, we pay a debt that is 200 years old." 400 human ships surged forward. The Battle of Torani Prime had begun. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Across 1,000 worlds, species watched the battle through sensors and spy drones. Military commanders studied the footage. Scientists recorded every moment. Politicians leaned forward in their seats, unable to look away. What they saw broke everything they thought they knew about war. The hegemony opened fire first. Thousands of weapons lit up the darkness of space. Their shots were precise and deadly. They had won 100 battles this way. Strike hard, strike fast, watch the enemy flee. The humans did not flee. They flew straight into the fire. Human ships exploded. Human crews died. But the fleet did not slow down. They kept coming. Guns blazing. Engines screaming. Where a ship fell, another took its place. They filled the gaps with their own bodies. "What are they doing?" a hegemony officer screamed. "They should be retreating." But the humans had not come to retreat. Captain Baek Minho stood on the bridge of the Iron Will as his ship shook from enemy fire. Alarms rang in his ears. Smoke filled the air. Half his weapons were gone. His shields were failing. A young officer ran up to him. "Captain, hull breach on deck 7. We have to pull back." Minho looked through the window. Below them, a civilian shuttle was trying to escape the battle. It was filled with Torani children being evacuated from the surface. A hegemony destroyer was moving to intercept it. "No," Minho said. "We stay." He pointed at the enemy ship. "Full speed ahead. Put us between that destroyer and the shuttle." "Sir, our shields are almost gone." "We cannot survive that." Minho turned to look at his crew. These people had followed him into hell. They deserved the truth. 200 years ago, he said, 47 Torani died so humans could live. Today, we repay that debt. If we die protecting their children, then we die with honor. He returned his gaze to the enemy. Ramming speed. The Iron Will accelerated. It flew directly into the hegemony destroyer, shields down, armor cracking. The two ships collided in a massive explosion that lit up the darkness. The civilian shuttle escaped safely. Minho's last words, recorded by the ship's black box, were simple. For the 47. Across the battlefield, Dr. Yoon Hana refused to stay on the sidelines. She was a scientist, not a soldier. But today, she was flying a rescue shuttle into the combat zone. "Doctor, this is insane," her pilot shouted. "The fighting is everywhere. There are pilots floating out there," Hana said, pulling on her spacesuit. "Ejected when their ships were destroyed. We are going to get them." The shuttle dove into the chaos. Explosions burst around them. Debris scraped against the hull. Hana ignored it all. She opened the airlock and pulled in survivor after survivor. Human. Sometimes Torani. She did not care about species. She only cared about lives. She lost count of how many trips she made. 10, 20, 30. Each time, she returned to the Resolve, dropped off the survivors, and flew back out. Someone asked her if she was afraid. "I am terrified," she admitted. "But those people out there need help, and I can help them. So I go." On the bridge of her ship, Lieutenant Park Sora fought her own battle. An enemy shot had killed everyone above her rank. The captain, the first officer, the tactical commander, all gone in a single explosion. She was 23 years old. She had never commanded anything larger than a training exercise. Now she commanded a destroyer in the middle of the largest battle in human history. "Lieutenant," an officer called. "What do we do?" Sora took a deep breath. She remembered her grandmother's message. "Make them proud. I take command," she said. Her voice did not shake. "Helm, bring us around. Target that carrier on the left. All weapons. Fire on my mark. But Lieutenant, that carrier has more guns than we do. Then we will have to be faster than they are. Fire." The ship moved like a dancer. Sora called out orders without hesitation. She saw patterns the enemy did not expect. She found weaknesses they had not protected. Under her command, the damaged destroyer destroyed 2 ships, 3 times its size. Military historians would later study her tactics. They would teach them in academies across the galaxy. They would call her a genius. Sora did not feel like a genius. She felt like a young woman trying to honor everyone who came before her. Warlord Drac watched his fleet die. He had expected an easy victory. He had expected the humans to break and run after the first volley. He had expected fear and despair. Instead, he watched human ships crash into his vessels when their weapons failed. He watched human crews seal hull breaches with their own bodies to keep their guns firing. He watched a species that refused to understand the concept of surrender. "They are insane," Drac whispered. "They are completely insane." An explosion rocked his flagship. Another human ship had rammed into it, sacrificing itself to damage his engines. "Warlord," an officer screamed. "We have lost 800 ships. 800! That is impossible. We outnumber them 5 to 1. They do not care. They just keep coming." Drac looked at the battle map. His beautiful fleet was being torn apart. Not because the humans were stronger. Not because they had better weapons. But because they fought like nothing he had ever seen. They fought like they did not care about dying. They fought like something mattered more than survival. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the hegemony had lost 1,600 ships. 80% of their fleet was burning wreckage. Warlord Drac fled in an escape shuttle. His flagship, a shattered ruin behind him. Humanity had lost 240 ships, 60% of their fleet, 12,000 men and women dead, but the Torani homeworld was safe. As Drac's shuttle raced away from the battlefield, he opened a communication channel. His voice was raw with disbelief and something that might have been terror. "What are they?" he screamed. "What are they?" Admiral Junho, his own ship damaged and bleeding atmosphere, heard the question. He opened a channel. His voice was tired but steady. "We are the species that remembers its debts." The transmission cut out. Drac did not respond. There was nothing to say. The recordings spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every world with a communication system received the footage. Military bases, government offices, private homes. Everyone saw what had happened at Torani Prime. Everyone saw the humans fight. They watched crews stay aboard dying ships to fire one more shot. They watched pilots fly into enemy vessels when their weapons were empty. They watched soldiers seal hull breaches with their own bodies, buying precious seconds for their comrades. They watched a species that had been dismissed as young, primitive, and unimportant become the most terrifying force the galaxy had ever seen. And they watched why. Because 200 years ago, a small species had shown humans kindness. On the Galactic Council station, High Speaker Ren called an emergency meeting. The chamber was full, but the mood was very different from before. No one was calm. No one was dismissive. Every delegate looked at the human seats with new eyes. "The hegemony has retreated," Ren announced. His smooth voice now carried a hint of nervousness. "Their warlord has returned to their home territory. They have declared the Torani conflict. Concluded. Their warlord. Insides. Concluded." The word hung in the air. Concluded. As if the hegemony had simply changed their mind. As if they had not been beaten by a species everyone had underestimated. A delegate from a powerful species raised his limb to speak. "High Speaker, we must discuss the human situation." "What situation?" Ren asked carefully. "They sacrificed 60% of their fleet for a species that gave them nothing of value. They lost 12,000 soldiers for a debt that was 2 centuries old." The delegate's voice trembled slightly. What else do they remember? The chamber fell silent. Across the room, delegates began thinking, remembering, worrying. One species had refused trade agreements with Earth 50 years ago. They had laughed at human ambassadors and called them primitive. Another species had supported sanctions against human colonies during a resource dispute. They had voted to starve human settlements for political gain. A third species had insulted humanity at a diplomatic summit. Their representative had called humans clever animals, nothing more. These memories, which had seemed so small before, now felt very heavy. What else do humans remember? A delegate from a smaller species raised her hand. Her voice was quiet but steady. 40 years ago, she said, Earth suffered a terrible plague. Millions of humans were dying. My people sent medicine. We sent doctors. We helped them without asking for anything in return. The chamber turned to look at her. Last month, she continued, a human ambassador visited my world. He said his government wanted to strengthen our relationship. He said humans remember their friends. She paused. He said they also remember those who are not their friends. The silence that followed was the loudest thing anyone had ever heard. On Torani Prime, the rebuilding had begun. Human ships remained in orbit, standing guard, while relief supplies poured in. Soldiers who had fought for hours without rest now helped clear debris and distribute food. Elder Vel insisted on meeting Admiral Junho in person. They met in what remained of the capital city. Buildings had been damaged by debris from the battle above. Streets were cracked. But the people were alive. That was what mattered. Junho had to kneel to speak with Elder Vel face to face. The Torani elder was small and frail, his glow dimmer than it had been 2 centuries ago. But his eyes were the same. Kind, gentle, full of something that humans might call grace. You came, Vel whispered. His voice was soft as wind through leaves. You actually came. Junho nodded. We had a debt to pay. You lost so much. Tears rolled down Vel's face. 12,000 of your people. So many ships. So many lives. All for us. Junho reached out and gently took the elder's thin hand. It was warm despite its fragility. 200 years ago, Junho said, 47 Torani died so that 3,000 humans could live. 47 of your people sacrificed everything for strangers, including someone you loved. Vel closed his eyes. He remembered Yen. He always remembered Yen. Today, Junho continued, 12,000 humans died, so that your people could live. The numbers are different, but the meaning is the same. He squeezed the elder's hand gently. The debt is repaid. Your people and mine are even now. But the friendship between us? That never ends. That is forever. Vel opened his eyes. For the first time in 200 years, he smiled without sadness. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you. Young Neth stood nearby, watching the exchange. He had been alive when humans were rescued all those years ago. He remembered thinking that the galaxy was cold and cruel, that kindness was a weakness. He had been wrong. Kindness was a seed. And sometimes, it grew into something wonderful. In the weeks that followed, human ambassadors traveled across the galaxy. They visited species who had helped Earth in the past. Old allies. Friends who had stood by humanity when others turned away. The message was always the same. We remember what you did for us. We want you to know that your kindness meant something. If you ever need help. But humans also visited other species. Those who had not been kind. Those who had stood by while humans suffered. Those who had laughed and insulted and turned away. To them, the message was different. It was not a threat. Humans did not threaten. They simply said, we remember. That was enough. On 100 worlds, rulers and warlords and emperors sat in their throne rooms and asked their advisors the same question. What did we ever do to the humans? Some found their answers were good. They had been fair. They had been kind. They had been friends. These rulers slept peacefully. Most found their answers were not good. They had been cruel. They had been dismissive. They had been enemies. These rulers did not sleep at all. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo for centuries. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the smartest. They were not the most advanced. But they had something no other species possessed. They remembered. They remembered every kindness shown to them, every sacrifice made for them, every friend who stood by them in darkness, and they remembered every insult, every betrayal, every hand that could have helped but chose not to. The galaxy understood now. Being the enemy of humanity was dangerous, but being the friend of humanity, that was something worth more than all the weapons in the universe. On Earth, the survivors of the battle were welcomed home as heroes. Monuments were built, stories were told. The names of the fallen were carved into stone so that no one would ever forget. But the greatest honor went not to the living humans. It went to the 47 Turani who had started it all 2 centuries ago. A new holiday was declared. Every year, on the anniversary of the rescue, humanity would stop and remember. They would speak the names of the 47. They would teach their children what those names meant, and they would remind themselves of a simple truth: kindness is never wasted, because somewhere in the universe, someone is keeping score.